quiet little town of Arboga, Sweden, nestled along the edge of the Arbogan River, time often moved slowly. The streets were lined with cobblestones, and old wooden houses stood as quiet witnesses to generations of memories. It was the kind of place where people rarely locked their doors, and neighbors greeted each other by name. In this peaceful corner of the world, a young mother was preparing dinner for her children one March evening. The soft clinking of pots and pans, the hum of life, and the gentle laughter of little ones filled the air. It felt like just another ordinary day. But in mere moments, that peaceful rhythm would be broken. The stillness of the night would be replaced by an eerie silence, a silence that would haunt the town forever. This is the story of a woman named Emma, of heartbreak, of courage, and of the kind of strength that only love can give. It is also the story of a tragedy that asked the quiet question, how do we live after the unimaginable? Emma Ljungostik was born in 1985 in Stockholm on a winter morning that sparkled with frost. Her parents described her as a quiet child with kind eyes, always watching, always listening. She didn't dream of fame or riches. Her heart longed only for simple things, a cozy home, laughter over dinner, the warmth of children's arms wrapped around her. By the time she was 19, Emma believed she had found her path. She had fallen in love with Nicholas, a boy she had known since her school days. Their young love bloomed quickly, and though they were barely more than teenagers, they decided to start a life together. Soon, they welcomed their first child, a bright-eyed boy named Max. A year later, little Saga was born. She was gentle, observant, always reaching out for her mother's hand. But life, as it often does, began to challenge the dreams they had built. The pressures of parenting at such a young age strained the relationship between Emma and Nicholas. Arguments turned to silence. Promises turned to distance. Eventually, the difficult decision was made. They would separate. The separation was not without heartache. There were disagreements over custody, over parenting, over who they used to be. But through it all, Emma's focus never wavered. Max and Saga came first. After some time, she decided to move to Arboga, a quiet, old town far from the noise of Stockholm. It offered something she desperately needed, a fresh start. Emma rented a small home, just big enough for her and the children. There were tulips in the garden, a tiny wooden fence, and a worn but beautiful front porch where she would sip tea in the early morning light. Life began to soften around the edges again. The children loved their new home. Max, with his curious eyes, took to exploring the fields behind their house. Saga followed close behind, her small feet barely keeping up, always laughing. Then Emma met Thorn. He was kind, patient, and deeply respectful of the life Emma had built. They met at a bookstore, of all places. He noticed her flipping through a parenting book and struck up a conversation. From that moment, things slowly fell into place. Thorn didn't try to replace Nicholas. He became something different, something steady, a calm presence in the storm Emma had weathered. As months passed, the bond between them grew. Thorn was there for school pickups, bedtime stories, scraped knees, and tiny birthday candles. Soon, they were planning a future together, one filled with hope. On March the 17th, 2008, the day began like any other. Emma spent the afternoon folding laundry, while the children played with crayons at the kitchen table. Max drew a picture of a castle, and Saga tried to copy him with adorable scribbles. Emma laughed, took a picture, and promised to hang it on the fridge. That evening, she began preparing dinner, a simple meal with the smell of potatoes and herbs filling the air. She called her sister Katerina, chatting about their parents' anniversary plans. The conversation was light, warm, ordinary. But then, something shifted. At precisely 7:07 p.m., Emma's messages to her sister stopped, mid-sentence. Katerina, sensing something strange, tried to call back. No answer. Just a few minutes later, Thorne returned home from work. He noticed the door was ajar. Odd. Emma always locked it. He called her name. No response. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The smell of dinner still lingered in the air. But something felt off. Toys were scattered unusually. The air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves had witnessed something terrible. And then he saw Emma. She lay on the floor, motionless. A soft trickle of blood had dried at her temple. Upstairs, Max and Saga were found in their beds, barely clinging to life. Panic, confusion, and heartbreak overtook the house. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. The scene was surreal. There were no signs of forced entry. No valuable possessions had been taken. This was not a robbery. It was something more deliberate, more personal. As Emma and the children were rushed to the hospital, investigators tried to understand what had happened. Why would someone harm a mother and her two small children? The town of Arboga was stunned. Schools held moments of silence. Neighbors wept openly. A sense of fear crept into every home. How could this happen here? Thorne was questioned first, of course. He had found the scene, but his alibi was airtight. He had been at work, confirmed by cameras and coworkers. Nicholas, Emma's ex-husband, was also considered, but he had been in another city that night and provided verifiable proof. Days passed. The children, despite every effort, could not be saved. Max and Saga slipped away, one after the other. Emma, still unconscious, remained unaware of their passing. And then, 10 days later, Emma opened her eyes. She couldn't speak right away, but her presence in the room was unmistakable. Doctors, nurses, and family surrounded her, offering gentle support as reality returned. When she learned of her children's deaths, she did not cry, not at first. She simply stared ahead, as though listening for sounds that were no longer there. Eventually, she remembered something. A name. A face. Tina, she whispered. She told detectives of a woman at the door that evening. A woman dressed in black, hood up. She had said her name, and then, without warning, struck Emma hard. Everything after that was a blur. Detectives showed her photographs. She paused at one. Then, slowly, she pointed. That's her. Her name was Christine Schurer. Christine was from Germany. She had a history of psychological instability and a long-standing obsession with Thorne. Years earlier, she had met him briefly during a vacation in Greece. What was only a short-lived fling for him became something deeper, more dangerous for her. When he ended the relationship, she refused to accept it. She began calling, emailing, even claiming she had his child. Thorne eventually blocked her, changed numbers, and cut ties completely. He never imagined she would resurface, but Christine had never really left. She followed his life online, watched from afar, and when she learned about Emma and the children, something inside her snapped. Police uncovered alarming evidence. Christine had traveled to Sweden and rented a small apartment near Arboga under a false name. She had detailed surveillance of Emma's home, a floor plan, a list of routines. She had even searched online for ways to avoid leaving evidence at a crime scene. The shoe print left at the home matched her boots. Fibers found on Emma's sweater matched her coat. The case was built carefully and quickly. Christine was arrested and extradited to Sweden. During her trial, she remained eerily calm. At times, she laughed, showed no remorse. The court, however, saw clearly. She was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison. In the aftermath, Emma's life became a quiet reflection of survival. Her physical wounds healed, but the emotional ones, those remained. She stayed in Arboga. Some people wondered why, but Emma once explained in a soft interview years later that her children had loved that little town, that garden, that house, and so she stayed, not for what was lost, but for what had been beautiful. With time, she and Thorne married. They had more children. 2, in fact. The house grew loud again, with toys on the floor, birthday candles, giggles. But there was always room for the memory of Max and Saga. Their photos stayed on the wall, their names whispered at bedtime. Nicholas, too, found his own path. He remarried and became a father again. He visited his children's graves often, sometimes leaving small toys or handwritten letters. In Arboga, the seasons continued to change. Winters brought quiet snow, and summers offered light that lingered long into the night. The town never forgot what happened, but they also remembered something else, Emma's strength. Because sometimes the most extraordinary thing we can do is to simply keep living, to choose love again, to wake up, to make dinner, to laugh, to tell stories of those we've lost, and keep their memory gently alive. Good night, Max. Good night, little Saga. You are not forgotten. Your story is carried in the quiet hearts of all who remember.